This is Lois Whaley for Women Today and Yesterday. And you may have noticed that we have a brand new logo, which looks very nice. So I have to thank Matt Green for that. We've had the same WT and Y for a very long time, so this is something new. My guest today is Andrea Reik. I hope it's Andrea.
I go by the other, but it's fine.
Andrea. Okay, Andrea. Andrea Reik. And we're going to be talking about energy concerns today. But first, let's know a little bit more about you, Andrea.
Okay.
How long have you lived here in Athens County?
I came to Ohio University in 1972, and I've never left. I've raised my husband and I have raised two children here, so it's, we love the area. It's the nature, the environment, the community, so we've been here a long time.
A long time. Have you retired from work outside the home?
Yes, my career has been in social work. That was my degree, and I retired almost 3 years ago from Athens County Children's Services. Had almost 35 years, and I did all kinds of things. I was caseworker, a supervisor, assistant director, and then I retired as executive director from the agency. So very familiar with kids and families in the communities, not only Athens, but the whole county.
The whole county,
yes.
Surely. Well, it's very good that the renewal levy just passed,
It is. I was pleased. I was able to work a little bit on it with Kathy Hill, the director. She's doing a great job. They have a great board and good staff. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I got to celebrate with them. So
yes.
It was a good evening. Yes, it was.
Were you, when you came in 1972, was the old Athens Children's Home still in place?
No, I just missed that.
Just missed it.
Within a few years, they opened. They were called group homes on Stony Brook there, and it was residential. There were house parents and children residing in them.
Yes.
And it was fairly new. So I missed the old children's home. We had plenty of pictures and some old benches and that from that time. But no, I missed that there. Well, I did work closely with Miss Sprout, Rowena Sprout, who was instrumental in making all that happen.
Yes, well, she was a county institution, wasn't
absolutely.
she? A wonderful person. Yes, when we came in 1964. So the old, big building that was the children's home was in place then, and it has since been replaced by the bypass.
The highway, that's correct.
The highway.
It's funny, as one of the projects was building a garden there at Children's Services so kids could experience that. And as you dug, you found little pieces of pottery and remnants from the children's home. So, yeah.
The archaeology of it all.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'm sorry I missed that, but I've seen plenty of pictures of it now. So it's good.
It was very institutional.
Yes.
Looked kind of like the present-day county home, which is still in place.
That's correct, yeah.
A big building, in short, yes. But I'm sure that the smaller cottage, more cottage style, is more welcoming for the children, probably.
Well, it's interesting with anything, any movement or that, it goes through cycles. So there was the children's home, and then there was a move to make it to group homes, which were smaller with house parents and staff and 6 to 12 kids living there. And now it's really moved to the family foster home whenever possible. Now some kids need a higher level of care, so they might be in a group home, but the majority of the children live in family foster homes. Yeah. There's no kids residing on Stony Brook anymore.
Is that right? My goodness. Well, things do change over time.
Yeah.
I just came from the ridges from Kennedy Museum where I was sitting for the Emeriti. And there's a place that has found a new vocation in life.
Yes.
Was when we came again, like I say, in 1964, it was still the Athens Asylum. But nowadays, of course, it's been fixed up really beautifully. I mean, it's a beautiful building, the main building, and now an art gallery.
That's right.
It's great when these old things can be made over into something nice and new.
Yep.
Oh, where do you personally live? Do you live out in the county?
My husband and I live in Canaan Township.
Canaan Township.
Yep. And we're in the middle of the woods, which we feel really lucky to be a part of. It's the best of both worlds because we're 7 minutes to town, but yet we're in the middle of the woods, so it's the best of everything. So.
Well, I must admit that when we came, we lived on Stewart Street, right by Jefferson Hall, and next to the education building.
Right.
And that spot is now, it's been a parking lot for decades, I think, but it belonged to the university, and they were renting to new faculty and so on if they had housing available, as they did when we came in '64. And we got so spoiled by living so close to downtown and so on that when we were looking for a permanent place, we were looking for some place actually in the neighborhood. We live off of Mill Street. So.
Okay, good.
So there are, but I know what you mean because we have friends who have beautiful homes outside of town, but as you point out, are close enough.
Oh yeah, it's great.
Right,
no,
you can
really
get in
wonderful.
quickly. Well, I imagine you must have voted on Election Day.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Always vote.
right.
A lot of other people don't, but
yes.
And I'm really happy. My husband and I always vote, and then our 2 grown daughters always vote. So I think that's a good thing. So
Do they still live with you?
no, they're both adults. One's out of state, and one lives in town, and she's a teacher in Meigs County. So.
In Meigs County.
Yeah.
So she has a bit more of a commute then,
Yes,
doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
We basically want to talk about energy concerns today, and I know that you have a petition. I have a petition also circulating to get signatures to put something on the November ballot, actually, county home rule kind of proposal. And I believe you're on that committee, aren't you?
Yeah, when I retired, and like I say, it's almost 3 years ago, I got really involved in the presidential campaign and met great people there, and out of it evolved moving into environmental issues. I would have never thought, I mean, I hike, kayak, bike, we camp, we do everything. So it's always been important, but I wouldn't have thought I would be putting my energy there. So I initially started volunteering with ACFAN, the Athens County Fracking Action Network, and it's a group that really brings attention to the environmental issues in the community, particularly fracking and injection wells.
Injection wells.
Yes.
I don't think we actually have any fracking yet in the county.
Well, and I've learned a lot, and I don't pretend I'm a scientist, but when I talk to people about my concern about fracking and injection wells, they go, oh, we've done fracking forever in this community. Well, that's the deep well drilling. Hydrofracturing, the newer version of fracking uses horizontal drilling. It injects high pressure fluids, water, chemicals, into the ground to extract the oil and gas out of there. So that is really different than someone in their yard having a gas well.
Yes,
so
yes, it is.
It's a huge difference. With fracking as we do it, or as the industry does it now, like I said, it's high power. It's in a tremendous amount of water mixed with chemicals shot into the ground. As a result of that, there's the waste. Some people call it wastewater. It's not water anymore. It is toxic frack waste. So it's the wastewater that comes out of this process. It's radioactive. It has toxic chemicals. It's an interesting thing I've learned. The Federal Clean Water Act made fracking exempt for declaring what the chemicals are in it. So it's a protected, it's considered not hazardous. So as this process is happening, companies by law are protected from saying all that's in the mixture there.
Right. Although, well, I guess they say, well, it's a trade secret.
Oh, yeah, but it is protected by the
Yes.
Clean Water Act. And in my thinking, that really needs to be changed because it is radioactive. It is toxic. It is not healthy for the air, the water, the soil. There's health impacts for children. They're saying pregnant women. There's a lot of concerns about the waste from fracking.
Yes.
And what really concerns me is right now in Ohio, we are being inundated with frack waste from neighboring states.
Yes.
Pennsylvania, West Virginia.
They probably have tighter regulations.
They do. And I've learned this, and I hope I
Strange,
explain
isn't
it
it?
well. The U.S. EPA is responsible for the underground injection well program. They have the ability to give primacy, to states that want to self-regulate. So Ohio, in the mid-'80s, received primacy for the underground injection well program. So Pennsylvania, West Virginia are under the guidelines of the federal U.S. EPA. Ohio self-regulates. Pennsylvania has roughly 9 to 10 injection wells in the whole state.
Really? My goodness.
West Virginia has somewhat of a similar, it kind of ebbs and flows. I wouldn't give an exact number, but it is a dozen or less in both states.
Whereas we have several hundred, I
We have
believe.
over 200 active injection wells operating because politically and the climate of Ohio is bring it on,
Yeah.
bring it,
They get paid, actually, for barrel, per barrel I read somewhere, I think it might have even been in the brochure that came from, is it ACFAN?
Yeah.
ACFAN.
Yeah.
That it was like 5 cents a barrel for Ohio wells, taking the water from Ohio wells, and 20 cents a barrel for out of state. But apparently it still costs less for West Virginia and Pennsylvania to send their
Well, there's
material here.
also a threshold. If a company reaches, I believe it's 500,000 barrels, they no longer have to pay no matter how much more they inject in the ground.
Well, isn't that strange? I mean, that
Well,
means more pollution for us.
I know.
And less money even.
So the Ohio Department of Natural Resources collected $227,000 in fees from the Athens County injection wells. So all of that goes to...
And that was 7 wells
Yeah.
at one time.
Yeah, and so that goes to ODNR. It is never, I'm opposed to it environmentally, health-wise. But on top of it, it is our land, our air, our community, our roads, and Athens County gets zero. out
Right.
of that. Now, just the other day, there is an injection well on State Route 144. It's about 4 miles from the high school. If you've been on State Route 144, it's a 2-lane, not always with berms on the side.
Oh, yes.
And there is heavy traffic there. A neighbor out there reports days where trucks are lined up to pull into this injection well site, the ATHA injection well. The road going back there had to be totally repaired with new, what do you call it, guardrails, and you can see the road is disintegrating. It is a road not designed for heavy brine trucks, as they call it, every day. So our community, we are forced to receive this frack water. We receive no financial compensation. It is a state route, so the state repairs the road, but there's a cost and inconvenience to local folks driving a road that's so destroyed out there.
Right.
And then on top of it, in the event that there's an emergency, there, our local emergency responders are the ones that have to respond to these accidents, not knowing what toxins are in, being spilled or exploding. And that is critical because that's how you know how to manage the spill there.
Right.
It's almost about a year ago, I believe it was Monroe County. There was an explosion there. I think like 20 trucks were destroyed. Over 70,000 fish in the stream died because of the contamination. And on top of that, the emergency responders did not know what they were battling.
Right.
So there's concern here. It's our water. Well, I'll go back a little bit. Ohio Department of Natural Resources is the agency if someone wants to do a frack well or an injection well. So they submit their application.
They have I was just at an ODNR, an event that ODNR had some people yesterday.
Oh, really? What was
But
that?
that was about abandoned mine land reclamation.
Okay.
The Ohio Mineland Partnership, which is something I've been interested in various aspects of environment for many years. And so I've been a member of that group for a long time, although not active recently. But since they were going to be nearby and I had not seen Raccoon Creek area myself, I thought this would be a good event, to go to. And so I was talking with Mitch Farley, who's retired from ODNR, but he was with the Abandoned Mineland projects, I think all his working career with ODNR, and he mentioned that they have like 6 or 7 different parts to the Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
That's right. Yeah, there is quite a few.
The one that we're dealing with, the one that we're concerned about is the Oil and Gas Division.
That's correct.
Because they are the ones that issue permits for drilling new wells and so on. And that's one of the things that's come up is that we have a brand new permit which is going to maybe even double the amount of wastewater which is admitted to Athens County, down there at Troy Township.
That's right across from the Coolville Rest area there. The whole process, the way it's written, ODNR publishes a notice in the paper of an application. Then it used to be you had 30 days to respond. It is now, I think, 10 days, maybe 15. It's definitely not 30. And you have an opportunity to do a response. Then if there are substantive concerns for health and safety, the chief shall do a public hearing. We've never had one in this county.
I know we've asked.
Our county commissioners, we've asked them, will you approach ODNR about doing a public hearing? They're ignored. Our state rep, we've talked to Debbie Phillips, we've talked to our state senator. We want a public hearing. We want that opportunity. We have never been granted that in this county. I've been really pleased so much that the county commissioners, we said, will you do a meeting then? And on 2 occasions, they've done, you can't call it a public hearing, but they've done public meetings. So citizens can submit their comments, and then that's forwarded on to Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
Well, but the interesting thing is they keep saying, oh, we've already addressed all these concerns.
That's right. Right. Or, yes. And so ACVAN, again, Athens County Fracking Action Network, at the approval of KNH2, which is one of the second injection well in Coolville, filed a lawsuit last January saying that we have a right to appeal this. It is almost a year and a half later. It is still tied up in Franklin County Court of Common Pleas.
Oh, really?
As the result of the approval of KNH3, which came, I think, about February, maybe March. ACVAN has again filed another lawsuit appealing KNH3, saying as a community we have substantive concerns, we have a right to appeal, we have a right to a hearing. All the funds for this lawsuit have been generated by local citizens. So we are concerned, and it's a vast array of community citizens that are concerned.
Yes.
So personally, I feel like it's difficult. Well, I used to kayak down the Hocking River. I won't go past the high school anymore because there's injection wells along there. And, liquid seep, one of the injection wells is on the side of the river, the one is right across the road. I am concerned that this frack waste goes into the Hocking River.
Well, supposedly they put the stuff down, thousands of feet, maybe as far down as 8,000 feet or something like that.
The well depth is about 4,000 feet.
4,000 feet out there.
However, they have, the pipe is concrete, a metal pipe with concrete. That only goes down 2,000 feet.
Is that right?
And so it can seep out anywhere. They've never mapped for water aquifers there. They have no idea where the water sources are in that area.
Yeah, where it might be. Well, and the interesting thing is that some of the water stays down there, but some of the water comes back up.
You mean from the injection well process?
From the
Yeah, that's
injection
true.
process.
I had an opportunity to meet with someone that lives in Little Hocking, and I feel like that end of the county is getting double whammy here because they are under the C8 lawsuit. Their water has been contaminated. They are living with C8 water filters. This individual, I don't have permission to use her name, but I should have asked her, but when they were reevaluating her property tax, they reduced it by $50,000 because of the C8 issue. And she's within a mile of KNH. So imagine, that's one of another negative outcome of this is property values go down. Who wants to buy land by an injection well?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the C8. If I remember correctly, the source of that was a manufacturing process on the other side of the river
Correct.
in West Virginia.
Yeah, it was DuPont, and it went across
DuPont.
the river.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not an expert on it, but that's what I know about
Right,
it. that it was,
and the water migrated, underground, underneath the river, over into Ohio territory. And so that's how a number of households in Ohio, near Belpre, down in that area, and close to the small part of Athens County that's
Little
on the
Hocking
river,
and that, yeah.
where the Hocking enters the Ohio. That's how those people have gotten this C8 pollutant in their water.
Now we're bringing in 3 million barrels, and for anybody watching, a barrel is 42 gallons.
42 gallons,
Yes.
yeah.
So we're bringing that in and to Athens County.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, and that's kind of gets to this Bill of Rights and the Charter, we feel helpless in protecting our community, in protecting our water. We write letters. I just last week was in Columbus. It was Lobby Day and met with Debbie Phillips and Lou Gentile. We've talked with Sherrod Brown's office. Help us. We don't want this here. This is the waste. This is not Ohio waste. This is not generated in our county. They will not listen to us. They will not listen to the local elected officials. I mean, like I say, our commissioners, our mayors, and that have said, stop. And there's nothing we can do. And that, to me, violates rights as citizens.
Right.
Especially with the serious contamination of water and soil and air. I mean, we see what's happening in California. They have a drought. Why? And water is precious. Once it's contaminated, we can't use it again. So why are we doing this? Why are we allowing this to come into our county?
Right.
So out of this, I've just recently become involved with the Bill of Rights Committee. You may know more about what happened at Athens City, but I know under the idea of saving the water in Athens City, it's prohibited fracking or injection wells in Athens City.
Right, that was on the ballot
Correct.
a year ago.
Yeah.
Well, it was in a fall election, and it passed overwhelmingly in Athens City. And interestingly enough, there were 3 other sort of similar things elsewhere in Ohio. And my understanding is that in the other towns, the people who favor fracking, because they are well-to-do corporations with deep pockets, really did a lot of lobbying the voters in those towns, and in those other towns they lost.
I know Youngstown they did, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and there were a couple of other towns too.
Okay.
But in Athens, they didn't even bother to spend money on trying to convince the voters of Athens, probably because they knew that we were kind of stiff-necked type people.
So right now what's happening is there's a charter and petition developed, and it is proposing that Athens County become a charter government with a local home rule and a section of a community bill of rights that talks about the rights of the people, protecting our air and water, and in that would be in banning injection wells for the county.
Yeah, there's a thought that would be a way of regulating, possibly even banning injection wells locally. And of course, we're always given the response that we can't do that because municipal governments, county governments are actually subsidiary to the state government.
That's correct. That's correct.
On the other hand, you know, this is how revolutions get started. People say enough.
That's right.
And if enough people say enough and protest enough, then things will change.
I feel like Ohio Department of Natural Resources is a rogue state government, that they do not listen to concerns of communities, elected officials.
Especially the oil and gas division.
Well, that's exactly where, thank you for
Right.
clarifying. That's exactly where it is. I can't tell you the phone calls, the letters I personally have done in meeting with people. Multiply that by many, many concerned people in this community.
Right.
County commissioners, mayors saying, we want a public hearing. Nothing. And that's not democracy. We have a right to protect our community, our environment there. So I think that's very important. So this petition, I have it sitting right here, is again to propose changing government, that it would be a charter and it would be home rule. Right now, we are out collecting signatures to put it on the ballot
In
countywide
November. Yes.
in November. We need 10% of the voters from the last election. Well, not many people voted, but we're aiming for 2,000 to 3,000, or 2,000 rather, of signatures. So we're out actively, probably be at the farmer's market on Saturdays if people want to sign.
Right. Well, you know that both I
On the
and
sidewalk, because
Andrea
we can't be in it.
have those petitions on our persons. If anyone is interested in contacting us, and we know others who are
Absolutely.
carrying
Well,
petitions.
and just to give an example, since we're talking about injection wells, in the year 2011, Athens County had a total of 172,000 barrels of injection frac waste brought to in the county, injected in. Last year, in the end of 2013, it was 700,000.
So it had been
It's a jump, and then
tremendously.
ending 2014, it was 2.9 million barrels of frac waste, and of that 2.3, well, almost 2.4 million are from out of state. And I think we mentioned with the approval of KNH3, which was approved in March, that it has a capacity of 4 million barrels. So if we're at 3 million without KNH3 and you add 4 million more, we're 7 million barrels. We would be the top county in the state.
in the state.
Receiving
Right.
injection well waste. The other thing that's happening, and they all tie in together, their oil and gas company Green Hunter did a petition to the U.S. Coast Guard about barging frac waste down the Ohio River. Over 70,000 letters were sent to the U.S. Coast Guard to say, express concerns. At this point, no decision's been officially made on that. At the same time, this company, Green Hunter, put a petition to the U.S. Corps of Engineers to build a dock in Portland, Ohio, Meigs County, to accept frac waste.
Right. I know there are people organizing in Meigs County
That's correct.
against that
Yes.
possibility because
Now they wanted to have this dock accept frac waste. What they got was approval to build the dock, but not to accept frac waste. But I am sure it's a process that they're working on. Okay, now we have the dock, we just have to get Coast Guard to approve barging frac waste. So last year, Meigs County had over 1 million barrels and almost, 1.1 million barrels, and 987,000 barrels were out of state.
Oh, really?
So the folks in Meigs County are like, whoa, what's going on here? We're really concerned.
They're the first stop across the Ohio
They
River.
absolutely are. The other there's several other things that are really pretty frightening. The West Virginia governor signed a contract for an oil and gas company to frack under the Ohio River.
Under the Ohio River, yeah. I think that was sort of put on hold, wasn't it?
Not that I know, but maybe you know something more than I do. I'm so busy on the local stuff.
Oh, right, yeah.
And, when you think about it, the Ohio River, for either barging or drilling underneath, it's the water source for over 3 million people.
Yes, all up and down the Ohio River.
And the Ohio River, out of a recent report, is the most polluted river in the country. And now we want to barge frac waste and drill underneath. It's pretty frightening. When you see what happened in Charleston, West Virginia, when they had a leakage in the water, people were up in arms and water brought in. Why are we doing this? And one other thing, environmentally, is it relates to the gas pipelines.
Oh, the gas pipelines.
Yeah, I feel like everywhere we go. Frac Tracker, which is an organization that does data collection. It isn't pro fracking or against fracking. It's just a data collection. And it says that there is 4,380 miles proposed of gas lines to come into Ohio. A fifth of these, and that's a fifth of what's being proposed nationally. So the oil and gas industry feels like it is pushing everything environmentally negatively. And at the same time, the state of Ohio has moved backwards on renewable energies, on solar and wind power. They undid some of the legislation to move things, to grow it in renewables. So it's a pretty frightening time for me in terms of where we're going in our state.
Well, this is from the New York Times. They had a special section on energy a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, I didn't see it.
And this headline really set me back. It says, a new OPEC emerges, the U.S. And what they're referring to, of course, OPEC was the oil-producing economies in the Middle East.
In the Middle East, yeah.
Headed by Saudi Arabia and so on. And since the 1970s, they have sort of ruled the roost in terms of the cost of oil, because they could vary the amount that they were getting out of the ground, and so on. And from time to time, they would do that if the price was seeming to, they weren't getting enough money, they could raise the price or whatever. Well, this whole idea about the U.S. being a new OPEC specifically relates to fracking. That's what they're talking about. This is what is making it possible for us, the United States, to appear to be a rival to the Middle East as a producer of oil and natural gas because of the development of horizontal fracking, which, as you say, has all these other unfortunate side consequences, including pollution of water with toxic chemicals, with sand, and going down and blasting away. That's what it does. It's injected a tremendous pressure into underground levels, which have trapped little bits of oil and gas, throughout it. And the whole idea is to bust up
That's right.
that underground stuff's releasing the oil or gas to come up the pipe, and out, and to then go to Louisiana or perhaps New York City and be transported to other places that are energy hungry and that look to fossil fuels for their energy. But fossil fuels, what is it? Fossil fuels are what happened millions and millions of years ago when there were these huge swamp-like places that had the tremendous green, which, eventually died, fell in the swamp, more grew, more fell, more grew, more fell, for millions of years, and was eventually covered over and formed into rock. And that's what we are turning loose now, is millions of years of fossil fuel. And that millions of years of fossil fuel means that all that carbon
Well, that's what I was going to say.
that was buried millions of years ago is coming up with carbon dioxide, causing global warming, which just means putting a sort of a blanket around the earth to trap in the heat.
Well, and to really capture it, I like the term climate change, because if you're in the middle of winter and you go, there is no global warming. Well, if you look at the whole earth, there really is.
Yes, right.
Yeah, there really is.
In spite of our terribly cold winter.
Yes. There's other
2014
places.
was the hottest year.
It was. Yeah, it was.
The hottest year worldwide ever. So, but people say, "Oh, I felt so cold all winter long.
I know.
I want more climate change."
I know.
It's just
So,
terrible.
I guess for me, I've learned a lot since I've retired in a whole new area, and it's kind of been very busy with it. But I love our community. We have the Wayne National Forest, we have Stroud's Run, we have the Hocking River, just beautiful places.
Farmers
And-
market.
Oh, absolutely. So why would we want to jeopardize that? And I feel like we need to say to the state of Ohio, do you want your child to come to Ohio University knowing that it's #2 in the state for injection well waste?
Right, and
coming
maybe
to
next
air?
year it'll be number one.
I know. And I've been out to, I won't say all the wells, but most of them. And the Ginsburg well that's out near Albany, it's like an open.
It's near Albany.
Yeah,
I
it's
was
a-
wondering where that was, but because I've read that
It's
they
like
have
a-
been out of compliance
It's
many
like
times.
an open pit. It's like an open swimming
An
pool.
open pit.
And the fence isn't even all the way around, so
Mm-hmm.
a child or an animal, a dog or something could come in.
Mm-hmm.
And the fumes, you can feel them. People cannot stay out there long without
Mm-hmm.
that. And we don't have a right to say, we don't want this, this isn't safe.
Mm-hmm.
You always, ODNR's mission statement used to be the protection of the environment. It's changed. I don't remember what it is exactly.
Well, the oil and gas people aren't too interested in protection
No.
of our environment
No.
here in Athens County, it seems,
No.
anyway.
So would I have ever thought I'd be working on passage of a charter government and Bill of Rights? Well, when you feel like you are not heard, and it's not just me alone, but a whole community is not heard, then we need to look at ways. That's why we have 2 lawsuits going. Now we're looking at this charter government. We're trying to say, no, stop. We don't want this here. And we should have the right to say no. Now, one of the interesting comments I had heard from someone was concerned about a charter and home rule, but what about property rights? How do you say ban injection wells? Well, that's the only thing it was in the charter was banning the injection wells. If people want to do their old-time gas wells, nobody was proposing doing it different. It was banning injection wells and banning purchasing water for injection well process. And I'm a property owner. I want rights as owner of the property, but I don't feel my right to contaminate the ground, the water that goes throughout the community, the air that goes all over the community trumps the rights of the well-being of everyone. You know,
Right.
so that's that is a sensitive issue.
Right.
There.
Well, that's the difficulty, is that air and water cannot be, they move. They move. They move from here to New England. I mean, when I first became interested in the whole air quality matter was in the 1980s, and it was about acid rain.
Okay.
The people were objecting in New England to the high smokestacks, which wafted lots of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide and so on, into their territory. Because you can't stop the air.
That's right.
You can't stop the water. And the earth is there, but the water and the air move. And when those are polluted, you can't assure that they are going to stay in place.
That's right.
Because they don't.
There's a great deal of fear in California now because of the droughts. And how do they manage water? It's really a finite, and a precious resource.
It is.
And we need to value that rather than doing this horrific fracking process that destroys, contaminates the water. It's just, and it's very frustrating to feel like we're trying to protect our community, our county, and we have no rights to do that. And
Well,
that's,
it's interesting, actually, one of the other things that was in this thing about energy and the new OPEC emerging, namely the U.S., but they had a big article on coal, and of course coal has been so important over the years to the Ohio community and the environment, but it is so costly. I mean, the place that I saw yesterday along Raccoon Creek, they have 30 acres that has been reclaimed.
okay.
What does that mean? It means that they've brought in soil to cover over a blasted-looking area where there was coal mining and where there was for, generation, just a black heap of stuff on the ground, They brought in, they've covered that over and planted grass. How far down is the black stuff? I asked a man. He said 3 or 4 feet. It's still there.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And water will seep in from the rain and will run through that area and will run out eventually somewhat, polluted, obviously. But, that was over $1 million to reclaim that 30 acres of land.
I remember when I came to Athens and seeing Raccoon Creek, the orange, rusty, mucky water. I mean, there was a price to pay for the coal mining. There really was. And it's taken how many years to turn, or work towards turning that around. And it's, to me, not very forward-thinking to be looking at other forms of energy, renewable energies. Just last fall, my husband and I put solar panels on our home. And he has the best time watching on a sunny day how much we're generating.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. And
There's another thing. I mean, there's been a move in the legislature by the power companies to not have to accept those solar generated electricity anymore.
I didn't know that. We'll have to check into that.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, no one says it would be easy just to have no natural gas right now, but at least be moving towards exploring and encouraging renewable energies instead of going backwards and putting barriers up to that.
Right.
So,
Well, it's a problem. See, I'm wearing my T-shirt.
I did
It
see that.
says, renewable energy is American security. Well, and this shows them putting up a wind
Yes.
power thing. As I said, I was just at Kennedy, and there was a beautiful modern quilt. They have interesting, beautiful modern quilts at Kennedy currently.
Oh, now, okay.
And they're going to be having those through Quilt National, which is
Okay.
coming up at the Dairy Barn.
okay.
But this was an objection to windmills. Why? Because the lady lives in a place that has a lot of wind, and a windmill company has moved in, put up lots of windmills, and their beautiful vista is gone, you know. And then there are other people who say, well, birds fly into them and get killed. I spoke to a person that I know who lives in Athens County and has a small windmill. He has solar panels and various things, but he has a small windmill. And I said, well, have you ever seen a dead bird? And he said, well, in 15 years, I've seen one.
Well, the people that say that, I would like to bring them down to Ginsburg and say, would you like that in your your
No.
neighbor's yard?
No,
I know.
no.
You know,
So it seems like there's always somebody's ox being gored.
that's true. That's a good way
And
to say
off
that.
of Martha's Vineyard, you know, up near Massachusetts, they have opposed putting windmills in the ocean there. Well, you know, they have fantastic number of windmills in the, I guess now, in some of the portions of the North Sea. The Danes are getting electricity from the wind that blows over the ocean near them. But I'm sure there are some people who say,
I'm sure. I know.
"Oh, look
I
at
know.
those windmills. What will
mean-
the car? What will the boats do at nighttime? You know, they'll run into a windmill."
This is not an easy discussion.
No, it isn't.
But to me, forwardly thinking, we need to be concerned about the injection wells and the fracking. We need to be concerned about our environment and the climate
Right.
change. And what was it yesterday in the U.S. Senate yesterday? They passed 50 to 49 saying climate change is not due to man.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm like,
Did they
"Hey."
vote against climate change?
Well-
Did they deny it?
Well, the way I read it, and I didn't have time to read it in depth yet, and I will, but it's not caused by man.
By human activity.
Human
Yeah,
activity,
yeah.
absolutely.
Well, but isn't this crazy? Like I said, for millions of years, those green plants fell down and were buried and were buried and were buried and finally turned into coal, you know? And now we're digging up all the coal, burning it, turning all the carbon loose in the air again. So,
So for me, this is a twofold issue. One certainly is the environment and our air and our water and our beauty of our community, but the other part that is really bothersome to me is we have no say.
yeah,
Just because ODNR, which receives funds from the oil and gas industry, says we must have it, at what cost? It's unbelievable to me. We get no response. We get denials. I called the Attorney General's office and said, so the revised code says there shall be a public hearing if there's substantive health and safety concerns. They're not doing that. Oh, well, then get yourself a lawyer. And I said, well, I thought you were the agency, kind of the watchdog. Here, I'm saying to you, there's a state agency is violating in the revised code. Get an attorney. So it's been really disappointing to me.
Disappointing. Yeah.
Frustrating. And
Right.
so to me, these lawsuits, as slow and methodical it goes through court, are a method. This Bill of Rights, the Charter, is another strategy to say we have a right to protect our community.
Right. And we've got until, I guess June 20th or something like that.
I know it's June. I'm not exactly sure.
It's past the middle of June to gather signatures to put it on the ballot. And let everyone vote.
Well, there's
Athens
another
County.
step. I mean, we may have the signatures. Board of Elections has to vet them.
Oh, yeah, they
But
have to
then
check all the
they have to
signatures.
decide whether it goes on the ballot as well. So
Right.
I don't know that process. Maybe
Yeah.
you do better than I.
Well, I'm not entirely sure on the process, but I know that there definitely is a possibility, and Andrea Reik and Lois Whaley are among the people who are circulating this petition to see if we can get it on the Athens Home Rule Charter on the ballot in November for people around the county to vote on.
That's
And there'll
great.
be a lot of people who will be thinking about this and talking about
Oh, yeah.
it upcoming,
Oh, yeah.
okay?
I think it'll be an interesting discussion.
And we're ready to talk about it, right?
We are.
Which is what we've been doing.
Well, on final note, I was going somewhere with my husband for dinner. We were going to Parkersburg and had to pick up some stuff. He goes, can't you talk about anything else? So I guess it is a part of me now.
Well, during this hour, we haven't talked about much of anything else, have we?
No.
This is Lois Whaley. My guest has been Andrea Reik, recently retired from Athens County Children's Services after many years, and I hope that we've been persuasive. And if we haven't, maybe you ought to let us know.
That's right. We'll talk to you some more.
Lois Whaley for Women Today and Yesterday.